children in Bristol. Officers attended a concern for welfare call in Blaze Walk in Sea Mills this afternoon. They say the suspect is currently in police custody at a hospital. The force said it was contacting the IOPC due to prior police contact. Sir Keir Starmer has called for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza during a speech at the Scottish Labour conference. It's a change to his previous stance of a pause in the fighting, saying instead the war must stop now. But he says the ceasefire can't be one-sided. He's calling on Hamas to release all of its remaining hostages. He also said a two-state solution must be back on the table.
An end to the fighting, not just now, not just for a pause, but permanently. A ceasefire that lasts, conference, that is what must happen now. The fighting must stop now.
Russian authorities have been accused of doing everything they can to avoid handing over Alexei Navalny's body to his family. Yesterday, the 69-year-old mother of President Putin's most vocal critic visited the remote penal colony where he died. She says she was told his body had been taken to a nearby morgue, but when she arrived, it was closed. Meanwhile, in London, tributes are continuing today outside the Russian embassy as people lay flowers and messages. Navalny's spokespeople claim his death was orchestrated murder by Putin, but that's been rejected by the Kremlin. Two people have been charged by police and will appear in court after a pro-Palestine demonstration in central London yesterday. One, 34-year-old Lucia Whitaker de Abreu, has been charged with failing to remove a face covering. The other, 48-year-old Martin Prady, is accused of obstructing a police constable. It comes after tens of thousands of protesters marched through the Irish, Scottish and English capitals in major demonstrations against the war in Gaza. And finally, the Prince of Wales is attending the BAFTA Film Awards tonight, his first high-profile royal engagement since his wife's operation. William, who is president of the arts charity, stopped to take selfies with members of the public as he made his way down the red carpet. The Zone of Interest by British director Jonathan Glazer has won the BAFTA for a film not in the English language. Robert Downey Jr. has won Best Supporting Actor for his role in Oppenheimer, and Divine Joy Randolph has won the Supporting Actress BAFTA for her role in The Holdovers. Well, for the latest stories, why not sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen right now, or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, time for Free Speech Nation.
The Royal Society of Literature fails to stand up for free speech. A man is arrested for pointing out that Hamas are terrorists. And hotels are urged to build wider corridors to accommodate fatter guests. This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. This is the show where we take a look at culture, current affairs and politics, and of course we'll have the latest from those lovable culture warriors who this week decided a classic video game needs a trigger warning for racism. More on that a little later. Also coming up on the show tonight, Professor Eric Kaufman is here to tell us why he's launching the first public online course on woke. Prize-winning author Miranda Seymour joins us to discuss the gender-censoring row that's caused a revolt among members of the Royal Society of Literature. And campaigners against the proposed hate speech law in Ireland will be here to tell us why, if adopted, it could be one of the worst violations of free speech the West has ever seen. And of course, myself and my wonderful panel will be answering questions from our studio audience, and my comedian panellists this evening are Cressida Wetton and Leo Kearse. Welcome. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Now, Leo, you often performed at Comedy Unleashed, my monthly comedy night. We've had complaints about the show last week, which has been quite funny. They've been tweeted out. We've explained we don't give refunds if you're offended. That's a you problem. You've had this kind of thing quite a lot as well, haven't you?
Yeah, now who goes to something like Comedy Unleashed, you know, and then gets offended? The whole point of it is it's supposed to, you know, anything goes, so you're going to get offended. But yeah, I was performing at Top Secret. I was just telling the audience before we started. So I used to do a solo show there there every month, and somebody wrote in a complaint email saying, I came to see Leo Kearse's show in June, and he was horrific and offensive and misogynist and racist and transphobic and all the rest of it. And yeah, I was, because those things are all funny. But they said, and we came to see him again in October, and he's still horrifically offensive. It's like, there's a solution here you're not looking at.
I think it's great they're giving you the benefit of the doubt. You know, coming back and just verifying whether they were right. I mean, I've seen your act, Cressida. You're not so controversial as Leo Kearse,
You don't think?
Well, I think you've got your moments, but not quite. Have you had any problems of this kind?
Subtler. No, but I'm hoping I don't have to email them again next time I see you.
No, exactly.
One more chance.
Let's get some questions from this rather beautiful studio audience. Our first question comes from Roger. Hi, Roger.
Hello. Why are people being punished for holding placards and having political opinions?
Yeah, Roger, this is a problem that I'm really grappling with because it's happening more and more. Now, 12 people were arrested for placard-related offences. That was during yesterday's pro-Palestine march in London. That's happening every weekend, of course, now. And the arrests followed protesters using abusive, threatening words, displaying material deemed likely to stir up racial hatred. That's the phrase they use, isn't it, Leo? But one guy seemed to be getting in trouble because he had a placard saying that Hamas were terrorists. Yeah,
which is obviously just a statement of fact. Hamas wouldn't deny that themselves. They'd be like, yeah, you know what, we are terrorists. We love it. We love terror.
I think Hamas are gutted, like the BBC won't call them terrorists because they're trying their damnedest, aren't they?
But I think the mistake people make is thinking that the police are there to sort of enforce the law, and they're there to keep the peace. So if there's if you've got a mob of 250,000 woke people and Islamists who are there to sort of hate on Israel, a lot of them, and you have somebody there who says, actually, Hamas are bad, then they're going to arrest that person to protect him and make the situation peaceful.
Well, we just saw the image of the screen of the guy being dragged away, quite roughly, I have to say. But, Cressida, this is a good point that there he is again. But one thing I've always thought about these pro-Palestine marches is if you are pro-Palestine, surely the first thing you should criticise is Hamas. What you should be saying is Hamas are terrible for the Palestinian people. They are responsible for the deaths that are occurring in Palestine now. So why don't they stand up and do that? When one guy does so, he gets dragged off by the police.
Well, yeah, I completely agree with you. But if you're going to criticise Hamas, you've got to do it very, very carefully, haven't you?
Right.
You don't want to do a Lord Austin. He's in trouble at the moment for criticising Hamas offensively. He didn't do it nicely.
Why do we have to protect Hamas's feelings?
I don't know. You've got to be very, very careful if you're going to do it.
So Lord Austin. So now this was the guy. He was representing a charity called what was it called?
Midland Heart.
Midland Heart, and they've asked him to step back because he tweeted out. You know the details, Leo.
We did a sort of Leo Kearse-style joke, didn't he?
He basically said, like, go down before you go to sleep tonight. Go down to your basement and check there aren't any terrorists down there because it's easily missed. Because basically he's referring to the fact that the UN relief effort charity in Palestine and the Gaza Strip had harboured terrorists, employed terrorists. They had terrorists on their payroll.
Is that right?
Yeah. If it's not, then I'm probably going to get sued. But no, they did. They had a lot of countries suspended funding, and they had to fire these employees because they're like, oh wait, it says here in your CV, 1993 to 2023, you're in Hamas and you've been killing people. So yeah, I mean, it just shows how the United Nations, charities, these global organisations, these woke organisations are often just hand in glove with the absolute worst terrorist organisations in the world.
I don't understand why pointing out that these tunnel networks exist, the fact that when Hamas gets aid money for the country, for the Palestinian people, they spend it on this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And for him to get in trouble for pointing out that they are Islamists, that's the correct word to use.
Well, it feels like, I think people don't separate Islamist out from just Islam, do they? It's like there's some
that's very offensive to Muslim people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that goes back to your point, why aren't they, why isn't everybody condemning Hamas other than Hamas?
Well, that should be your first port of call, shouldn't it? OK, I'm not saying you can't criticise Israel on the Israeli government's approach, but you have to start with Hamas and the pogrom that they committed on October the 7th, surely. Anyway, let's get a question now from Shirley. Hi, Shirley.
Hello. Is a debate on gender really a far-right issue?
Far right. I'm so bored of that phrase, you know what I mean? Like, anyone who acknowledges that there are two sexes is suddenly far right, because that's what Hitler and Mussolini were all about. This question from Shirley is, of course, about Labour. They've been accused of being undemocratic because they pressured a pub into cancelling a debate, and this debate features Kelly J. Keane, who's been on this show a couple of times, and she's a campaigner, and she was just on the panel. And this was an event at a pub hosted by the Tottenham Conservative Association, meant to go ahead yesterday, and then they got a letter saying that they couldn't do it because Kelly J. Keane apparently attracts far-right groups. Now, they've tried this trick before, but because some awful, ghastly neo-Nazi types turned up near to an event that she was holding in Australia, they kind of tried to blame that on her and suggest that the two were the same thing. They weren't. That was an opportunistic group turning up to... They're not... Neo-Nazis aren't pro-feminist. They're not pro an event called Let Women Speak. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and this only seems to go in one direction. I mean, if you go to any sort of left-wing march, you're going to get the craziest cranks and the most, far-left mouths. You see people, literally waving the communist flag, which is responsible for the deaths of hundreds of millions of people. I mean, fortunately, most of those people were communists, so it's a good thing. But it's, I just think there needs to be some parity. And some of the criticism of Kelly J. Keane, like New Zealand's TV, blurred her touching her zip because they said that her touching her zip was a far-right dog whistle because she's making that symbol.
Yeah, but she wasn't making the symbol, she was just adjusting a zip.
Yeah, and also, this isn't a far-right symbol.
It means
this
okay.
Is, or I might masturbate later. That's, this... Yeah.
I mean, that was incredible because she obviously wasn't making that symbol anyway. She was just adjusting a top. But this New Zealand news channel blurred out the hand so that they could pretend that it was some horrible ghastly...
Yeah.
I mean, this is learning stuff, isn't it?
She's talked about having voted Labour in the past. She's so not far-right.
But also, even if she were right-wing, which she isn't, why would they be banning a panel where there's a discussion about one of the most important issues of our day? What are Labour playing at here?
They're anti-democratic, aren't they? They're just kind of playing whack-a-mole with things they don't like. I think maybe I'll write to the pub and say I do want to see Kelly J. Keane there.
Yeah, but they won't listen to you if you say that, will they? Because you've got the unfashionable opinion, Chris.
Well, and the unfashionable workplace. Exactly.
No, it's just a nightmare. Anyway, let's move on now. We've got a question from Maureen. Hi, Maureen.
Yeah, hi, Andrew.
Who is a second cousin of mine, I should
I am indeed, yes. Very proud to be a second cousin of yours,
oh,
yes.
Thank you. Very few are.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. And my question is, should you only be arrested if your singing voice is bad?
It's a good question. So there was a Met police officer who was seen threatening a Christian preacher with arrest on the grounds of a hate crime. And this is just weeks after a gospel singer was threatened with arrest for singing religious songs. And the evangelists could be heard protesting their innocence in a video posted to YouTube. I think we can show you a clip of that video.
Space protection order is the legislation. It's a document put by the local council, and for example, it's against public space protection order to amplify the speech with a speaker and with a microphone.
But obviously a crime has been committed, we need to investigate. Okay. Or do you want a £100 fine? Okay. Because if you don't want that, we could deal with it in custody.
I'm not trying to be rude. I just want to ask one question.
I think you are, sir, trying to be rude.
I want to answer the question. Thank you. Thank you, officer. Can I ask you the question? I'm not asking you the question. I'm asking you.
Okay, but you're aware that I can fine you for that.
I'm just asking the question.
One second. Who you are.
1 second.
If you do not, I will arrest you for public space protection order breach.
Now, Leo, I know you say that the police are there to keep the peace.
Yeah.
I don't see how bad singing is really going to affect the peace. Well, I suppose it affects. I think it's annoying.
And also, it might have been nice singing. We didn't even
get to hear the singing.
But yeah, because he's singing, Bible verses. I guess in Sadiq Khan's London, that's seen as inflammatory or not woke enough or something like that. But I bet they wouldn't do this with a religion other than Christianity.
What they need to do is rewrite the Bible in accordance with intersectional ideas. I think that's the way to do it. Why not do that?
Well, I saw more of that clip earlier, and he specifically talked about gay people, and he said everybody can be saved by Jesus, and he ran off a list of people, and he said gay people. That was one of his...
gay people are included?
Yes, that's what he said. So whether he changed his tune when the police turned up, I don't know, but this idea that he'd been accused of homophobia, it wasn't what I heard him say.
But even if... I mean, I'm sorry, I've walked past people on the street screaming, gay people are going to burn in hell, you're all evil. I find it hilarious, I don't want them arrested.
Well, no, quite. I'll tell you what else. I look at that clip and I think, God, I never want to join the police. Doesn't it just look squabbly and boring and kind of ineffective? It's another bad look for the police.
And also the police look like the ideologues there. They're coming along, they're the morality police. They're saying, oh, no, these opinions, you can't voice them out loud in London.
Yeah. Yep, they should go to Iran, where they have morality police. That's what they should do. OK, so our final question from the moment comes from Ryan. Ryan, welcome back.
Hi, good evening. Can TikTok influencers deter migrants?
Well, we'll see. So there are claims that the Home Office has a budget of about £30,000 to pay overseas influencers to deter illegal migration. A short list of influencers in Albania supposedly includes a rapper, 2 comedians, lifestyle bloggers, TV personalities, a travel writer. It's quite a good idea, I suppose.
Oh, it's fantastic. And I no doubt Leo will be going to Albania for his next holiday to make some videos, some content. I mean, why give away the budget? That's the first mistake.
Is it true, though? I mean, these are claims at the moment. Well, we don't know for sure, do we?
Yeah, no, I mean, this does make sense to an extent because a lot of the migration is fueled by social media. So, you know, when Albanians were getting here or other migrants were getting here, they weren't always having, you know, the time that they'd been promised.
No.
But they didn't want to reveal to people back home that it was, you know, tougher than they'd heard. So they're all posting videos of them in their state-paid for hotels, you know, doing
like
the
mini versions of MTV's Cribs.
Yeah, sheafing off the £10 notes that, you know, they'd made washing cars or whatever.
The problem with all of this, you know, these people are being exploited by people traffickers and gangsters. I don't think the solution is to pay some TikTok influencer to deter people. I think the solution is dealing with the criminals,
Well,
right?
yeah, that as well. But, I mean, you know, advertising stuff on TikTok to young people, that works.
And the criminals are in another country, so I mean, we don't really have much jurisdiction over France.
That's true, but luckily the French police are really doing a good job to deal with them, aren't they?
Well, they've got no incentive. France has got no incentive to stop them.
No.
The EU wants to punish Britain for leaving, so you know they're basically saying, like, yeah, we're not going to stop them coming through.
All right. Well, look, that's what we've got time for in this section. But coming up, campaigners against the proposed hate speech law in Ireland will be here to tell us why. If it's adopted, it will be one of the worst violations of free speech that we've ever seen. You're watching and listening to Free Speech Nation on GB News.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Are you across this microaggression story?
I'm across microaggressions. I'm also across XL bullies.
You would not last 5 minutes.
Oh, for God's
So
sake,
basi-
civil servants, give me strength.
So civil servants have been taught not to roll their eyes. Something you do very well. We both do it quite a lot, actually.
Because it's seen as an act of microaggression. This, by the way, this costs the taxpayer, this training, £160,000. What the hell is going on in our woke civil service? Who cares if someone rolls their eyes in exasperation?
What the hell is going on in our civil service, full stop, if the way that civil servants are communicating with each other is rolling their eyes and looking at their phones? I mean, is the government being run by people who are essentially acting to each other like stroppy teenagers?
Yeah.
But I'm all right with people, because, you see, I would be in defence of eye rolling.
So me too, I couldn't care less.
But do you know why? Because I want people to give me their genuine reaction, as long as it's not deeply offensive. But I want to know how people feel. And what they're being told here, civil servants are being taught, and of course this is an area of employment law, because people are taking cases against their bosses who roll their eyes at them. They're saying they're being encouraged to say nothing and nod their heads to promote transparency and inclusion. Don't show what you really think, just nod your head.
But I think that comes with then saying what you really think, and this is the key problem, and what these courses are trying to establish. And I looked into some of them when I was researching this, and it's not saying hide what you're feeling. It's saying, rather than huffing and puffing and rolling your eyes, if you've got a disagreement with someone, say I've got a disagreement with someone. Because otherwise, you can't have an effective workplace if people are sort of just passively, aggressively huffing at each other.
Why do these civil servants need to be taught this? Why do people need to be taught this? This is just normal discourse in a normal working day. You don't need a seminar on it.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Ireland's controversial criminal justice bill is currently at committee stage, but it's already causing uproar both at home and abroad. The country's Department of Justice says the bill's purpose is to protect those who are most vulnerable to hate crime. It will allow for higher sentences if someone is convicted of assaulting a person on the basis of hatred for protected characteristics, including race, religion, gender and disability. But critics, including Elon Musk, say the proposed legislation excessively encroaches upon freedom of expression, with little clarity on what defines incitement to hatred. So to discuss this, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by free speech commentator and campaigner Lois McClatchy. So critics will say, well, critics of yours might say, but this is against hate. It's against stirring up hatred. Why are you supporting that?
Sure, this could actually be one of the furthest reaching censorial bills that we've ever seen in Western Europe. Now, the bill bans hate speech, and you might think, well, good, nobody likes to be insulted, nobody likes to be offended, but here's the thing. The bill doesn't clarify what hate speech actually is. So it gives the government the freest gambit to define what they don't like as material that has to be censored in the country of Ireland.
This is a major problem across Europe. Whenever you see these hate speech laws enacted, no one seems to have a standard definition of what hatred means. In fact, I believe the Irish government's definition was a circular one. It went back to hatred. Which isn't helpful, is it?
Well, that's exactly right. And instead of taking heed of the warning that they must define it, they've said they want to future-proof the law and allow that openness for new things that can come into society that they want to define as hate in the future.
So this sort of thing, though, can't this be weaponised by people with an agenda? I mean, not just the government criminalising speech that criticises them, but, for example, people who are gender-critical feminists, for instance, are often attacked as being hateful when all they are doing is expressing perfectly legitimate views that most people hold.
Well, absolutely. And at ADF International, we've been campaigning against these hate speech laws across the world. So we've seen what happens when they are put into place. Now, in Finland, recently we had a big case where a politician and a grandmother was put through 2 criminal trials on the basis that she had tweeted a Bible verse and questioned her church's decision to sponsor the Pride event in Helsinki. Now, she obviously has one persuasion, one outview, a Christian one, but because the government found that this was offensive, she was dragged through 2 criminal trials and has been appealed to the Supreme Court. In Mexico, similarly, we supported the defense of Quadri, a politician there who had tweeted about his gender-critical views. Because the government there, the court found him to be offensive, he was not only placed on an offenders register, he has been forced to tweet an apology on Twitter, on X, every day for 15 days, twice a day, because of his words. A pure humiliation. This is insane.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. And these hate speech laws are just spreading from country to country, and we need to learn from these examples that freedom of speech is really important.
But people will say, yes, but the Irish government will know not to go that far, and we can trust them. Can't we?
Can we?
Yeah, I'm not so sure, but that's the point, isn't it? That we've seen examples of where governments go too far on this.
Exactly, and it depends on the government's own standards of what they consider to be so-called hate speech. So it puts conversations in the real world, but also online, about abortion, gender, marriage, all of the things that are hot political topics, but really important to society. It will chill conversations on those topical issues.
Now, ADF International has made a video to raise awareness of this campaign. I think we have a clip of that.
Why are you on X?
No matter who you are, where you're from, or what your beliefs are, you're probably here for the same reason as us.
To share your views and your opinions.
In Finland, I was criminally charged and put on trial twice over 4 years for my Bible verse tweet. State prosecution has appealed my case to the Supreme Court.
A Mexican court forced me to delete my posts and to post an apology on X 2 times a day for 15 days.
And you can see this full video if you go to the Twitter account of ADF International. It's the pinned tweet up there, so you can have a look at that. Of course, we're not meant to call it Twitter anymore. It's X.
X, formerly known as Twitter.
Formerly known as Twitter. But Lois, you know, you make this point about some of those people, perfectly innocent, decent people who have been criminalised, dragged through the courts. Of course, sometimes some really unpleasant people who have some unpleasant things to say also get taken to court. But we have to protect free speech for them as well, don't we?
That's right, and it will actually impact all of us outside of Ireland as well, because what many people don't know is that X, Twitter's headquarters for Europe, Middle East and Africa, are in Dublin. So this law could actually make the management and directors of X personally culpable for hate speech that they platform on X. So that affects what all of us get to tweet and to discuss online. So this is much bigger than just even in Ireland, and that's why Elon Musk has been looking at this bill with great concern, and he has pledged to back the legal defence of those who have been affected by the bill and to challenge the bill himself, which is excellent. But I think what this video has done such a great job of showing is that around the world we are appalled by this, and we all need to stand up against censorship where we see it.
I think a lot of people will be really baffled that this has happened. You know, I would say roughly 15, 20 years ago, we had reached a kind of consensus in this country that, yes, free speech is the thing we stand up for. We don't need to debate the legitimacy of that anymore. What's happened?
Cancel culture, I suppose. It's a move towards anyone who says the wrong thing or falls out of line with the dominant religion of our day is, you know, excommunicated from our society. It's actually not a new idea. It's a very, very old idea, but somehow it's kind of come back into society. And those of us who realise the importance of everybody being able to engage in conversations, even if we disagree, but finding those ways to come towards truth or to even settle our disagreements amicably is the pinnacle of a flourishing society.
And close to home, we also have problems in your country, in Scotland.
We do.
Don't we?
We always do.
They're a bit step ahead of Ireland. I think they've already implemented their hate speech bill.
We passed our hate speech law in 2021, but the police have actually begged the government not to implement it yet because they don't feel that they have the resources to be going around managing squabbles, essentially. As soon as that law was implemented, they had a huge spike in complaints about tweets, things that people had said that were deemed nasty online or just inappropriate or whatever it was, offensive. And so they said, well, we simply can't manage this. We've also got to, you know, police robberies, etc. So they have asked for the delay. Now, I do believe that there are motions to try and get that law in this year, because they are running out of time.
Well, the worry is, I mean, Humza Yousaf, when he was Justice Secretary, he was instrumental in the implementation of this bill. And one of the things that he put in the bill, or the SNP put in the bill, was that you could be criminalised for something offensive you've said in your own home.
Yes.
So this is how draconian this is. And I don't see any signs that the SNP want to slow this down in any way.
That's right. I mean, they obviously have faced a lot of resistance, but you're right, that law passed with a scenario. It could be that you're sitting with your family dinner and you say something perhaps about gender critical theory or whatever the hot topic of the day is. If your kids report you to their teacher and the teacher reports you to the authorities, that means that you could face a punishment for your free speech.
Well, it's as though we haven't learned from history. I mean, the idea of children informing on their parents, that's not a new thing. It's happened in some pretty grim totalitarian societies.
Not that long ago.
Not that long ago, exactly.
Exactly.
So what can we actually do? I mean, what can your average person do to push back against what's happening in all of these governments, not just Ireland?
I think, well, if you're in Ireland, you can write to your MP, and if you're here, you can write to your MP as well. I think the political action on this and raising the alarm and showing that there is public resistance against censorship can go a long, long way. So I would encourage anyone who's in Ireland or in Scotland or wherever these hate speech laws are occurring to get in touch with their local leaders and politicians and make that really clear and use your free speech. Speak out against censorship on X, on whatever platform you are, and in real life too.
Lois McClatchy, thanks ever so much for joining me.
Thank you so much.
And next on Free Speech Nation, my panel will be answering some more questions from our lovely studio audience, including, I'm told, one about a classic video game, which is depicting old-fashioned racist stereotypes. You won't want to miss that. This is Free Speech Nation on GB News.
On Mark Dolan tonight in My Big Opinion. Why are the Conservatives losing? Because they're not Conservative anymore. My Mark Meets guest is legendary former Labour MP and celebrated diarist Chris Mullin. And in My Take at 10, John Lewis are in hot water for launching a magazine which recommends breast binders for young girls. When did they give up selling electronic goods and the latest fashions? We're live at 9.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Francis, Just Stop Oil have in the past broken the law. I remember distinctly the Dartford crossing. That ended up with 2 jailed, I believe, if I remember correctly. Is it ever justified in your view?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I mean, I would have to say yes. I mean, we're trying to preserve my life, your lives, the lives of your family, and it's not just the planet that we're trying to protect, it's the lives of millions of people. And, you know, we know from history that we have to break the law in order to put pressure on the government and to be listened to.
No one would doubt your sincerity in your views. You genuinely believe in what you fight for. But there are others who think differently. For example, there are Islamist extremists who believe that people will go to hell unless they convert to Islam. They will sincerely, perhaps, break the law in order to force people to convert. In their view, they might be saving people's lives for eternity. There might be abortion activists who say that babies are being murdered and to save their lives we need to break the law to stop people having abortions. Why do you get to say that your moral conviction is the one that's right and other people's individual moral conviction are those that are wrong?
So what's really integral to the Just Stop Oil campaign is the fact that it is a non-violent campaign. That's what separates us from the examples that you've just given. We're absolutely dedicated non-violence, both as a tactic and as a principle. So though we might be breaking the law...
If individuals take it upon themselves to break the law for whatever their course is, surely the way that we decide what society wants in general is democratic and within the law.
Well, of course, we know also that protest is absolutely integral to maintaining and upholding a democracy, and in particular, non-violent protest. I mean, I really can't express to you how severe this situation is, and I'm sure you know this.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Later in the show, I'm going to be turning agony uncle with the help of my panel, Cressida Wetton and Leo Kearse. We're going to help you deal with your unfiltered dilemmas. So if you've got any personal problems, just email us. Why wouldn't you? gbviews@gbnews.com. We're going to do our best to sort your life out. Anyway, let's get some more questions from the audience. First question from Mike. Hello, Mike.
Hi, Andrew. Would you rather ride the Elizabeth or the Lioness line?
That's a good question. So there's 6, as I understand it, 6 new overground lines. £6 million they cost. There's a million a line, that's not bad. And they are called the Lioness line, the Mildmay or Mildmay line, which is named after a hospital, I believe. The Windrush line, the Weaver line, which is named after Jackie Weaver, who went viral a couple of years ago. The Suffragette line and the Liberty line, and each line obviously has its own colour. Do you like these names for these lines? They seem quite progressive, Leo.
We think they're progressive, but they spent £6 million renaming these lines. And, like, bear in mind, you know, TfL has got this enormous black hole in its budget. It's like, why have they got spare money? They could have just asked the public.
Oh, wait, I thought they built the lines for...
No.
That's how much it costs.
The lines.
That's how much it costs to name them.
You can get a seat. You can build a tube carriage for £6 million.
I could have renamed them for a tenner.
We could have done it for free. Could have just asked the public, and they'd be like, call it Tubey McTubeface, and then it's sorted.
How did they spend £6 million renaming it? How would you even do that? It's like Brewster's Millions. I don't know how you would do it.
So basically, you've got to go to an expensive branding agency. They've got to do a 6-month consultation, speaking to users of the lines, and
Come on.
And also they talk about London. There's no mention of any sort of Cockney in there. They should have had a Jack and Danny line or something like that.
No. Traditionally, we've got lots of royalty. So where's the Harry line? Where's the Meghan Markle line?
Yeah, there should be a Meghan Markle line.
That's what we should have.
No, but like a Chaz and Dave line, what about that? Like, I don't understand why they haven't. That's incredible. Like, honestly, a Twitter poll would have sorted that.
Wouldn't it?
Like 6 million for this.
I think you start by telling the consultants what the budget is. I think that's how that works.
Okay.
And go from there.
So the suffragette line, and then the what's the other one? The lioness line. Well, that's to do with the football team, isn't it?
Something to do with football. You know I've got sport blindness.
You do, yes.
But yeah, I guess we're all very happy about the lionesses, aren't we? Well done them. No David Beckham line.
No,
obviously.
there should be one.
But the lioness line, that's a gendered word. It's like actress. So surely that's going to be unwoke. That's going to be a criminal offence in about 3 weeks. You say lioness.
Yeah, I think there probably will be. You can never anticipate how crazy it's going to be. Let's move on now to a question. Gavin.
Hi, Andrew.
Hi.
My question is... I'll take my glasses off. Surely our armed forces could spend their time more proactively than sitting through the climate change courses.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. The Royal Navy is considering introducing compulsory climate change courses for all sailors, with suggestions that the online classes will focus on the impact of climate change on defence. And this is coming from a leaked document. Do you think it's a waste of money, Leo?
Oh, it's a complete waste of money. I mean, especially right now, when Putin's literally invading Europe, there's some more pressing concerns to deal with than like, oh, what's our carbon footprint? Let's go to the soft plate area and have a
their carbon footprint's shrinking anyway because there's fewer and fewer of them. They should have put it into the recruitment budget.
I mean, tanks release quite a lot of carbon, I believe, so they should use like Volvos or something instead, shouldn't they?
Electric tanks.
Yeah.
Are there plenty of charging points?
Yeah, I think there are charging points.
Excellent.
Just a couple of Teslas.
Yeah.
A few armoured Teslas here and there.
But the army is actually the most carbon-friendly, climate-friendly part of the entire public sector, because when they shoot people, they reduce their carbon footprint to zero.
That is a good point.
We need more wars.
And that's why they've been set up to do that.
Yeah.
OK, very interesting. Let's get another question now. This one's from Joanna. Where's Joanna? Hi, Joanna.
Hi, Andrew.
Hello.
Good evening. Hi. Should hotel hallways be widened to accommodate fat people, if you can say that?
Well, no, OK. No, you're perfectly allowed to say that, Joanna.
Okay.
Do you think it's a reasonable request to extend the corridors?
Well, I think if it encroaches onto the square meterage in the rooms, they're still going to complain anyway, aren't they?
Yes, that's a very good point. You can't widen the buildings, can you? No,
new buildings.
This is a real thing that's happened. So this is apparently this lifestyle travel guru, Jaylin Cheney. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Jaylin Cheney has said her aim is to make the travel industry more accepting, more inclusive, and part of this, she thinks, is that plus-size holiday goers, as she puts it, should have... And there she is.
Whoa!
Oh, my God. Yeah, she is very attractive, but there's no reason to do that.
She's stunning.
Don't objectify her.
Leo,
she is... Man, she could be described in The Guardian as stunning and brave.
That is... Leo, you should not be objectifying individuals. She's making a point that...
I didn't objectify her. She made herself an object.
Okay.
She made herself an immovable object.
Cressida, this is fat shaming, so I'm going to come to you for balance.
You're not going to get any balance, Rita. As somebody that lives on a narrow boat, she can jog on. I mean...
Well, the problem is she can't jog on.
Okay, sorry, how insensitive.
Yeah.
No, I think it's absolutely mad. I think fat activism is on its way out because a lot of them are losing their lives very early. They get to 40 and keel over, sadly.
No, but they say there's absolutely no health problems related to obesity whatsoever.
They say it until they're 40 and then they don't say it anymore. I mean, it's unfortunately...
So what happens when the doctor... Well, the doctor said to me once, you need to lose a bit of weight. Should I have said, you're fat-shaming me, doctor? Should I have sued the man?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, that's what a lot of people would do. And they say, fat-shaming doctors doesn't help doesn't help obese people or whatever. And even like Sophie Hagen, who's a fat activist. And when I say fat activist, I mean a really fat activist. She called cancer research like this tirade, directed this tirade of abuse of cancer research.
Very naughty word.
A word we can't use on this show.
Yeah.
And you know, basically because they spoke some scientific truth, which is if you're obese, you're at more risk of.
Cancer research put up posters on the tube saying, you know, that you are at risk of cancer if you are morbidly obese, and they were correct.
Yeah.
And to be attacked and brutalised by a fat activist is just, you know, it's really grim, I think. Actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that one?
I'm laughing at being attacked by a fat activist. Sorry. No thoughts. I just have no sympathy for this particular cause. I think it's really harmful.
Yeah, absolutely. OK, well, let's get another question. And basically, we're not going to narrow hotel or widen hotel hallways.
Yes,
we should narrow them. That's a good idea.
That would be a good incentive.
You have a turnstile in the foyer.
Yeah, that would be a good incentive.
At least the one to the canteen.
Yeah.
Just.
Leo's on a roll. I know this is going to get clipped by our enemies. I don't care. Let's get a question.
If I'm on a roll, I hope a fat activist doesn't eat me.
OK, Caroline.
Is Tomb Raider racist?
Is Tomb Raider racist? Right. So this is that game with Lara Croft, was that her name?
Yep.
And it was an old game, and they've remastered the games very close to the original game, but they've now had to slap it with a trigger warning because what they say that there are racist stereotypes. This is from the 1990s, by the way. It's very funny to me when these things from like yesterday are basically problematized. And apparently there are tribes who are cannibals. I never played this game. I was into Sonic the Hedgehog, but this is and there's nothing wrong with Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't think you can't problematize that, can you? I hope not. Anyway, so I think we've got a clip. Have we got a clip of the Tomb Raider?
Is well for you. Me fasting this day. You make plenty good flesh pot.
You forget. I might be quite hungry myself. Famished, actually. Why did your ancestors flee from Antarctica so suddenly?
Coma. Bad place. Plenty flesh. But for the price.
OK. Is that offensive, Leo?
No, I think it's providing representation. This is, you know,
for cannibals.
Yeah, you can't make people happy. It's like if you put representation in the game, they're unhappy. If you didn't have it, if it was a white Papua Guinean tribesman, then they'd be unhappy about that. Like,
yeah, but I don't think the games were trying to suggest any connection between cannibalism and black people. I mean,
the guy doesn't eat anything. If anybody should be upset about Tomb Raider, it should be the dinosaur community because you know she shoots a T-Rex that's trying to attack her. There's never in the history of humankind been an attack by a T-Rex on humans.
No, there hasn't. Which is they're decent creatures.
Brilliant.
What do you think about Cressida? The thing about this is I've even seen Lara Croft problematised, saying she's too curvy, she's too idealised.
Well, she's very idealised.
Yeah, she should look more like that activist we saw earlier.
Maybe something in between.
They'd be having enough for a banquet for those cannibals, wouldn't they?
Yes, let's bring back Lara Croft as a fat activist.
Yeah.
People used to get really upset about her.
They did, didn't they? They did.
She was promoting eating disorders and body dysmorphia and so on.
I think they redesigned her to look a bit more frumpy. I think they did.
Well,
the backflips weren't as impressive, but...
Right, OK.
But there was positive representation, that's the important thing. OK, look, now, Crystal Dynamics have released this image of the trigger warning. Apparently we don't have the image. We've lost the image. It's too offensive. So I'm sorry about that. We did have it momentarily. We don't anymore. Well, anyway, that's all we've got time for in this section, so please don't go anywhere.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Lee Anderson's Real World, Fridays from 7 p.m.
Dr. Jane Jones, who's the clinical lead for Care After Combat.
Yeah.
Jane, thanks for coming. And just tell me a little bit about your organisation. What do you do?
OK, well, thank you for having me here so we can talk about Care After Combat. So we are an organisation, a charity, who work into the prison system, working with military veterans who've somehow got involved with the justice system and
So there's quite a high population of ex-servicemen and women in our prisons. Why is that, do you think?
So 2014, the government did a review of who was resident in UK prisons, and what they found were that military veterans are the highest occupational group, and this obviously raises some concerns. So the government wanted to do something about that, and so they supported Care After Combat initially, just as a scoping exercise, really, to see if there was any way we could help these men and women actually, you know, understand the problems that led to offending behaviour and go on to lead successful lives.
So what sort of offending behaviour are we talking typically for people that's in prison that's actually served in our armed forces?
Primarily, it's violence.
Yeah.
So that is the highest offence that we work with.
Okay.
But of course, the military, as with everybody else, it's the full range of offending behaviour.
OK, so we're in a pub, Jane, Dr. Jane, and I guess for some people, you know, the odd tip of alcohol is good, a bit of fun of a weekend, relax, let your hair down. But for some people, alcohol is not always their best friend, and I guess that plays a part in some of your veterans that end up inside.
Absolutely. So, speaking from my own experience, a good 2/3 of the people I work with have some kind of mental health problem or mental health difficulty, struggling to either adapt into civilian life or with some of the traumas they've experienced during service. People might self-medicate with alcohol to manage some of those thoughts and feelings.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on this Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. The country's leading literary society is facing a crisis. Fellows at the Royal Society of Literature are in revolt against what they see as its high-handed, autocratic leadership. So, to tell us more, I'm delighted to welcome the prize-winning author and former Royal Society fellow, Miranda Seymour. Thank you. Now, you resigned from the Royal Society of Literature in November, I believe. Do you want to tell us why?
I would say that when I was made a Fellow of the Royal Society of Literature, which is quite different from the Society of Authors, which is for all writers.
Yes.
But the Society of Literature is something that you work towards. You get made a Fellow only when you've written 2 books that are reckoned, or more, that are meant to be really well thought of by other fellows, and then they nominate you. And I think, like lots of other people, well, like all fellows, I thought it was the proudest day of my life. I was absolutely thrilled. So to resign was very hard for me. And I resigned because I'd been feeling increasingly that the society was not doing what it should in terms of defending people and standing up for writers and freedom of speech. And I went in November to the AGM, which used to be held with a rather jolly party in the summer, and has now been moved to a very secretive, difficult, inaccessible location in the middle of November. Not a fun thing to do. So hardly anybody there, which I sort of felt was what they wanted.
Really?
They were asked by people from the audience, a very small audience, who could defend the fact that the Royal Society of Literature had failed. They were the only society, I think, which failed to write a letter of support for Salman Rushdie after that appalling knife attack on him.
Now, this is so important, isn't it? Because we didn't realise until last week when Dame Marina Warner, a former president of the society, came out and said, no, there's been infighting. They'd said, that the leadership of the society had said, we won't put out a statement to defend Salman Rushdie's right to free speech because that would be controversial, it would cause offence. Now,
Incredible.
What do you make of that?
Well, I wrote down something which is pretty amazing, because this is what the Royal Society of Literature has said in the past. We do not condone violence towards authors. We believe that authors should be free of harm when expressing their views. And that's practically their motto. It ought to be up there on their website. We stand for the right of writers to express their views.
And yet the current president this week on The Guardian wrote an article saying we don't get involved in political disputes. And, of course, Salman Rushdie pointed out, you know, this is something you should be... and let me just give you another example.
A lot of backtracking going on there.
A lot. Well, good. But then there was also the case of Kate Clancy, the poet, who was treated appallingly on social media, accused of all sorts of things that was absolutely not true, racism, ableism.
Horrible story.
And no defence from the Royal Society. They threw her under the bus.
And even more surprisingly, the director, the current director, had actually been to 2 of these schools where Kate Clancy worked with children most of us would have great difficulty with from the least privileged parts of the world. And she was beloved by her pupils. Molly Rosenberg went along to 2 of those classes and then apparently directed that the Royal Society of Literature should not defend her. And she resigned. How could she not?
I find that incredible. And, of course, in that case, as you say, her pupils, who were the subject of the book she had written, they thought it was wonderful, that they had no problem with the book at all. It was other people.
It was almost as though the Royal Society of Literature had sided against her. And that's what feels so awful to me about both that and Salman Rushdie.
Why is this, do you think? Why are so many people who are meant to side with authors, that's their raison d'etre, why are they failing to do this? Do you have any idea?
It seems to have begun out of a fear that they could be censored themselves, which is a very poor spirit. I mean, Tom Stoppard said, I think in December, that if anything is a thing that writers should stand for, it's freedom of expression. The Royal Society of Literature, called such a grand name, should, above all these societies, defend writers in their right to say anything. So, I mean, if we'd been in the time of, I don't know, Bunyan or Blake or anybody like that, Jonathan Swift, the Royal Society of Literature now would be saying, no, we can't possibly say anything.
But I find this, the idea that knife-wielding maniacs need to be protected from offence doesn't make any sense to me. But is it the case that we have, as a culture, as a society, been failing on this issue, perhaps since the original fatwa against Salman Rushdie in 1989, where instead of a robust, collected view, you know, saying we will not stand for this, we will not have a foreign power threaten one of our greatest writers, instead of that, we had endless debates on television about whether he brought it on himself for, let's not forget, writing a book. Yeah, what can we do about this? You know?
It's quite extraordinary. I wonder how many people... I believe the Ayatollah didn't ever actually even read the book.
Of course not, no.
No, I actually did read it and find it very difficult to see what the damage was, really. But anyway, I'll take that as accepted.
But it's easy to be offended by something if you don't bother reading it, I suppose.
Very easy indeed. But to go back to the point that I'm here for, which is that I believe, and that's why I resigned, the Royal Society of Literature has, above all, a duty to defend writers to say what they want to say. And if they can't do that, they shouldn't exist.
Do you think that, following the criticism we've seen this week from various sources, that the Royal Society of Literature at this point might reflect, you know, they might listen to what you're saying tonight, hopefully.
I hope so.
And they might change their direction on this?
I mean, they've been going for 200 years. Walter Scott started it. And for most of that time, they've done a wonderful job and they've been very well regarded, supported people. It's very recent. I think it's a product of, I don't know, cancel culture or a very conscientious culture, whatever we call it, that they are just running scared. And I think what needs to happen is, at the moment, actually, they've become so opaque themselves that to approach the board of 3 who run it, you have to post a public note on their website and you will get an answer after 8 weeks. It's quite a small society.
Yes, well, I hope they do listen to what you've got to say. And before you go, Miranda, can you just tell us about the kind of books that you write and the kind of work you've done?
Well, it's probably why I feel so strongly about this. My passion in life has been finding women who have been neglected or undervalued or misrepresented and writing about them. So one was about a wonderful racing driver who was dissed as a collaborator, and actually she hadn't collaborated at all. One was Byron's wife, who was incredibly annoying, but also wonderful and brave and courageous. And it's sort of fun to bring them back into prominence and get them looked at again.
Yes,
I love doing that.
Absolutely. And that, of course, is the power of the written word, which is something that the Royal Societies appear to be forgetting. Well, hopefully something can be done about this now, and hopefully they will backtrack a little bit.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, well, look, Miranda Seymour, thank you ever so much for joining me today. Really, really appreciate it.
It's been an honour, Andrew. Thank you.
Now, it is absolutely worth you checking out the Guardian article by Bernardine Evaristo, who is the current president of the Royal Society of Literature. And she effectively wrote to say that, of course, she believes in free speech. Of course, the Royal Society defends this principle, but that they just don't want to get involved or seen to be politically partisan. That seems to be the issue here. And, of course, when it comes to Salman Rushdie, we all saw what happened with that horrific knife attack in New York at the event. And as Miranda says, first port of call is you have to stand up and say, no, this is not acceptable. I happen to have read the Satanic Verses. I've read most of Salman Rushdie's work. It's a brilliant piece of work. I think the first thing that we should all do is be promoting that book and promoting his work and standing by him. I find it genuinely disturbing that so many people who should know better are failing to do so, but we're seeing this absolutely across the board, saying that the work is offensive, that it caused offence and therefore he effectively didn't deserve to have police protection, didn't deserve to have taxpayers' money looking after him. I find this absolutely abhorrent, and hopefully we can do something about it. Anyway, that's my rant over. That is the end of the first hour here on Free Speech Nation. Please don't go anywhere. There's plenty more to come between now and 9 o'clock.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, I'm Marco Patagna. Here's your latest weather update for the Met Office. We'll hold on to rather mixed conditions weather-wise across the UK during the week ahead, all of us seeing some rain at times and turning colder from the north later on. We've got a small ridge of high pressure moving in from the west tonight, quietening the weather down, but notice weather fronts gathering out towards the northwest and they'll bring further unsettled weather during the next few days. So as we go into the evening and during the overnight period, much of the UK is set fine. We'll see some clear spells, allowing a few mist and fog patches to form, particularly across Wales and the south-west of England, but outbreaks of rain work their way in from the north-west across Scotland and Northern Ireland, reaching Wales, the north of England by the morning, with blustery showers towards the north-west later. A mild night, so no frost problems tonight. And as we go into Monday, that band of rain continues its journey southeastwards, becoming light and patchy as it reaches the southeast during the course of the morning, and then fizzling out to give much brighter weather across the UK heading into the afternoon. Some showers, though, towards the northwest, quite blustery here, with further rain moving in across the west of Scotland later in the day. It's a pretty mild day once again, temperatures generally in double figures, peaking at 10 in the north and near 13 or 14 degrees down towards the southeast. As for Tuesday, well, a band of wet and windy weather will move its way southeastwards across many northern parts of the UK. Towards the south and east, it stays mostly fine with a few bright spells at times and staying quite mild once again for the time of year, with temperatures into the low teens Celsius in a few spots. But it stays pretty unsettled as we go into Wednesday and Thursday, further wet weather around and turning colder from the north later on too.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sunday mornings from 9:30.
Questions to be answered, and there seem to be a significant amount, does once again point its way to a public inquiry into exactly what happened in this case. Starmer's called for that. Would you call for that too?
I certainly think that first of all, there's one thing that's happening now. The NHS have to order an independent inquiry. That's been done. So they've got to look at all the whys and wherefores of what happened with this man. If it appears that we're not getting sufficient depth and breadth to this, then I think having an inquiry with all the powers that brings would be extremely advantageous. What I don't want is some long-winded inquiry that will take years, by which time other people will have been put at risk and maybe other lives have lost. We know what the problems are here, Camilla. Law's been passed on this. This is all about making sure on the ground we implement the highest degree of monitoring in order to ensure the safety of the public.
Has care in the community failed? I mean, it seems oxymoronic to say that it's care in the community in this case. We know that the number of psychiatric care beds has been slashed from 52,000 back in 2001 to 24,000 now. I've anecdotally, because I wrote my column about this in The Telegraph yesterday, received quite a lot of correspondence from people saying the situation with care in the community is dire. People aren't being adequately monitored. Was it a mistake to close down all of those mental institutions?
I don't think we should go back to those days when we had those appalling institutions where we just lock people away and forget about them, and not just mental health people, but autistic people and disabled people. Horrific way to treat individuals, and you know I campaign on that a lot.
I know.
However, I think if we move into a more community-based approach, which can be really good for many, many people who are on the spectrum and on that scale of mental health, we have to remember there will be a small but significant number who will continue to pose a danger.
Okay.
And that's why monitoring is so important.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation this week, but let's get a news update first from Ray Addison.
Many thanks. Our top stories tonight. Avon and Somerset Police have referred themselves to the independent police watchdog after arresting a 42-year-old woman on suspicion of murder following the deaths of 3 children in Bristol. Officers attended a concern for welfare call in Blaze Walk in Sea Mills this afternoon. They say the suspect is currently in police custody at a hospital. One local woman says the family had 2 boys aged around 8 and 6 months and a girl aged around 4. The force said it was contacting the IOPC due to prior police contact. Sir Keir Starmer has called for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza during a speech at the Scottish Labour conference. It's a change to his previous stance of a pause in the fighting, saying instead the war must stop now. But he says the ceasefire can't be one-sided. He's calling on Hamas to release all of its remaining hostages. He also said a 2-state solution must be back on the table.
An end to the fighting, not just now, not just for a pause, but permanently. A ceasefire that lasts, conference, that is what must happen now. The fighting must stop now.
Well, Russian authorities have been accused of doing everything they can to avoid handing over Alexei Navalny's body to his family. Yesterday, the 69-year-old mother of President Putin's most vocal critic visited the remote penal colony where he died. She says she was told his body had been taken to a nearby morgue, but when she arrived, it was closed. Meanwhile, in London, tributes have been pouring in outside the Russian embassy as people lay flowers and messages. Navalny's spokespeople claim his death was orchestrated murder by Putin, but that's been rejected by the Kremlin. 2 people have been charged by police and will appear in court after a pro-Palestine demonstration in central London yesterday. One, 34-year-old Lucia Whitaker de Abri, has been charged with failing to remove a face covering. The other, 48-year-old Martin Prady, is accused of obstructing a police constable. It comes after tens of thousands of protesters marched through the Irish, Scottish and English capitals in major demonstrations against the war in Gaza. And finally, the Prince of Wales has been attending the BAFTA Film Awards tonight, his first high-profile royal engagement since his wife's operation. William, who is president of the arts charity, stopped to take selfies with members of the public as he made his way down the red carpet. Oppenheimer has won BAFTAs for Best Film, Best Director, Best Actor and Best Supporting Actor, whilst Emma Stone has won Best Actress for her role in Poor Things. Meanwhile, The Zone of Interest has won Outstanding British Film. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Free Speech Nation.
Welcome back to the second second hour of Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. We have a wonderful studio audience here, so let's get some more questions from them. Our first question from Oisin. Hi, Oisin.
Hello, Andrew. So my question is, should a 90-year-old charity volunteer be expected to be aware of personal pronouns?
Yeah, this was a big story this week. So the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, and I should say that is the American charity, has defended. It's fired this 90-year-old volunteer. She's been working with the charity for 60 years. Oh. She had an email saying, "Can you please add your pronouns to your email signature?" And she replied saying, "I don't really understand what that means. I don't know what pronouns are." Her name's Fran Itkoff, and volunteering for 60 years, and they've said that, you know, she doesn't satisfy our diversity and inclusion criteria.
It's classic diversity and inclusion. They're like, sorry, this is a diverse organisation and we're inclusive, so you have to get out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's not being inclusive. That's literally throwing a 90-year-old woman out in the street.
And they've actually doubled down on this. They've had a backlash, but they've said that, you know, they've dealt with this in the correct way. They haven't, have they?
Absolutely not. I mean, if she's really in her 90s, I'm so impressed that she's sending emails, full stop. Well done, her. Sorry, that's my age.
Well, they actually said in their statement, as an organisation, we are in a continued conversation about assuring that our diversity, equity and inclusion policies evolve in service of our mission, and we'll reach out to Fran in service of this goal. Well done. That's the least you can do. Isn't it incredible? And, you know, this obviously, National Multiple Sclerosis Society, that's an important charity, it's an important cause. Yeah. They're just shooting themselves in the foot over this stuff. And also, if you're saying to someone you have to declare your pronouns, well, 99% of us don't believe in a thing called gender identity. Yeah. You may as well ask people to announce the colour of their aura.
And it's so removed. it's so removed from the sort of actual core purpose of the Multiple Sclerosis Society, because people who are transgender get multiple sclerosis, and people who reject the whole gender identity nonsense get multiple sclerosis. So they shouldn't be bringing this into, you know, making this a core part of the thing. And they say, like, oh, it's a conversation. We're keen to have a conversation. No, they're not. They're never keen to have a conversation. They're keen to stamp out any dissent or anybody who even asks a question about it, like Fran did. And they just want to enforce the rigid, like, intolerant, inflexible view on everybody.
Absolutely, it really is shocking stuff. OK, we're going to move on to a question from Sue. Hi, Sue.
Hello, Andrew. Is Pontins racist?
Pontins, so this is, you know, Pontins, the holiday camp operator. So the EHRC has said that they committed flagrant breaches of the Equality Act because they discriminated. They drew up, basically, Pontins drew up a list of what they called undesirable Irish surnames. I do hope that... I do hope that Doyle wasn't on there. But apparently they'd also asked their call centre staff to listen for Irish accents and then decline or cancel the bookings. I mean, it's a bit dodgy, isn't it, this one?
Unbelievable. I mean, can you imagine if it was a different ethnic group? I don't think that would go down. Well, it's not going down very well anyway.
It's definitely not going down, no.
Absolutely outrageous.
No, although, to be fair, a lot of my family are drunks, so, I mean, it's fair enough.
If you were Pontins, don't you want to sell alcohol?
If you're watching, Mum, I didn't mean that. And the audience know I don't mean anything I say, so don't get upset about it.
No, I think Pontins have made a huge mistake. You want the drunks, you want the people who are going to spend the money behind the bar.
Of course you do, absolutely.
This is bad news for everyone.
But, I mean, but they would say that proportionately they have problems with people with surnames of this kind. Is that a fair defence?
Yeah, no, they're targeting Irish travellers, and, you know, it might be racist, it might be discriminatory to target them. Is it inaccurate? Is it, you know,
I knew you'd take this stance. I knew you'd defend them, Leo.
We're going to take it from an evidence-based point of view. You know,
why would we do that?
0.1% of the population is Irish traveller or Roma, Gypsy, or whatever.
Yes.
But 5% of the prison population is. So that suggests a huge overrepresentation in criminal activity. And
yeah, but you can't. That's kind of like a collective punishment thing, isn't it? Then you're just discriminating because of the behaviour of certain people, which I don't think is fair.
I mean,
it's not fair.
It's enough. I mean, you're saying that, but you don't run a hotel. I mean, why don't you open up your garden to Irish travellers? And why don't you? It's easy to be generous with somebody else's hotel.
Well, we've heard both sides of that argument there, so let's move on now to Joel. Joel, hi, Joel. John.
Is drug-induced milk from transgender women ideal food for infants?
Yeah, so this is pretty dodgy. So, drug-induced milk from transgender women, in other words, people who are born male, in other words, not milk. Well, this NHS trust is basically saying this is as good as a mother's breast milk. This is a leaked letter. It came from the medical director of University Hospital Sussex NHS Foundation Trust, and it describes both as human milk. It says that they are ideal food for infants, both the sort of fabricated milk. Now, there was also an academic study where they were talking about how we shouldn't be concerned about feeding babies this form of fabricated hormone-ingested milk, because they said even if it causes medical problems to the baby, that shouldn't be the priority when it comes to people's trans identity. I'm not joking. So, and that, by the way, is not the trust. That's another academic paper. But what I'm saying is that there is a trend emerging here where actually the health of the child is not prioritised over the, I suppose, the mental health of the trans-identifying individual in question. This is dodgy as hell.
Yeah, absolutely. Yet another milk that isn't milk. No, you're absolutely right. If the paper was saying there are some arguments for it in terms of bonding or just anything that was child-focused, I might listen. But as you say, it's got nothing to do with the child and everything to do with the trans mother. It's just unbelievable that a parent would not put the baby first. I mean, isn't that
that is
step one parenting?
Yeah, that's pretty scary stuff. Leo, do you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think this is going to be the next esoteric hipster milk. You know, they moved on from cow milk, and then there's almond milk, oat milk. Now it's going to be, can I have a latte with transgender mother milk, please? You know what I mean? That's going to be the next thing in Hackney.
I think that's probably right. I think I can absolutely believe that.
I'd rather hipsters drank it than babies. It just seems like, what is wrong? When is the asteroid going to just wipe out human civilization? This is disgusting. Why would you force a baby to suck on the hairy chest of somebody who's born male to get some baby?
It's not even a debate, is it? It's not even a debate.
And you can get formula milk. So this is just somebody, going through, using the baby as a prop in their own sort of expressive weirdness. I just find this, Please, Jesus, come. Come now, come back. We need you.
Bring the asteroid, absolutely. I feel like that every week on this show, not because I hate the show, but because of all the stuff we cover, you just think at some point Armageddon feels like a sweet relief. Let's go to a question now from Rob. Hi, Rob.
Hi, Andrew. Does John Lewis need to review its internal magazine?
Yeah, I've seen John Lewis trending all week about this. So they've been accused of being contemptuously dismissive of staff. They've launched an in-house magazine offering tips from Mermaids, which is a very controversial trans children's charity. That's what they call themselves. And they published this, so John Lewis Group published this internal magazine called Identity, which was supposed to coincide with the beginning of LGBTQIA2S+ History Month. And the articles were giving advice to parents on chest binders, and there's a calendar with pansexual and pan-romantic visibility and... what's going on, Leo?
Yeah,
please explain this to me. Why do we getting this from John Lewis?
Yeah, this seems weird. So this is a magazine that went out to all staff, all 70,000 staff, to sort of celebrate whatever month it is. It's always a month. Yeah. And it basically says it's got this advice, how to chest bind your child, which is a very disputed thing.
It's really bad for them.
It's like something that tribes people would do. The ones who had the planks on their head to make their head a funny shape. It's the same. It's the same kind of thing. It's just we've got a new ideology, we've got a new religion, new child sacrifices that have to be made. So they have that, and they have all these all the trans staff, saying this is my identity.
Yeah.
All
also, Mermaids is currently under investigation by the Charity Commission. They're on their forums, online forums. They were caught giving advice on chest binders to underage individuals without parents' consent. You know, this is what they're being investigated for. Why on earth would John Lewis be endorsing this kind of nonsense?
And Stonewall as well. Stonewall is, you know, now a contentious organisation. They run this sort of mafia racket where if you give them money, you can put the Stonewall badge on and you get more diversity points, which means you can get ESG funding from BlackRock and Vanguard and all the rest of it. So yeah, I mean the whole thing's pretty crazy, and it's got way out of hand.
I mean, Stonewall this week are posting about that this is a National Aromantic Week.
Yeah.
OK? That's people who don't particularly feel any romantic attachment to other people. If any of those people are watching, I just want you to know you're not oppressed, OK? Just deal with it. Right.
I think the fact that they've got to John Lewis, it really shows how powerful these people are, because John Lewis, I mean, it's your nan's favourite brand, isn't it? It's
well, not anymore.
Well, not anymore. But it's not a sort of trendy, woke product. You know, John Lewis is...
No, it's fallen.
Well,
and I can't go to Waitrose anymore because it's the same group.
There you go.
Which is terrible. I'm going to have to go to Lidl. I'm going to have to slum it.
Welcome, Andrew.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, we have got a statement, however, in the interests of balance. This is from John Lewis. John Lewis says, "We want the partnership to be a place where people can work or shop with confidence, irrespective of their backgrounds. Multiple studies, including those from the government, show that trans people are at higher risk of hate crimes and discrimination. And this magazine was created by our LGBTQIA+ network to champion understanding and support. It has been positively received by the huge majority of our partners. Must correct them on that, however, because trans people, according to the research, are in fact one of the safest demographics in the country. But never mind.
And also, if any people that received the magazine had spoken out and been like, "I don't agree with this," they'd have been fired, like the women from the MS Society.
Well, this is the point, isn't it? If you're an employee and you're having this stuff shoved down your throat, you don't really have a choice but to go along with it. There's a kind of coercion there, isn't there? It's problematic stuff, to use the phrase that they love. Next on Free Speech Nation, Professor Eric Kaufman is here to tell us why he's launched the first public online course on wokeness. Do not go anywhere.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
Former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has made her much-anticipated appearance before the Scottish COVID inquiry today. It comes after allegations emerged that she deleted key pandemic WhatsApp messages, used the pandemic to push her own political agenda. But let's just cast our mind back, shall we, to August 2021, when Sturgeon was asked if she'd hand over all her WhatsApps to the inquiry. Here we go.
I think if you understand statutory public inquiries, you would know that even if I wasn't prepared to give that assurance, which for the avoidance of doubt I am, then I wouldn't have the ability. This will be a judge-led statutory public inquiry.
Which, for the avoidance of doubt, I am. OK. Well, you weren't, were you? But fast forward to today, and she was much less forthcoming.
WhatsApp messages between yourself and Mr Youssef and Ms Lloyd were produced by you. Where did you get them?
They were provided to me through the Scottish Government.
But did you delete them?
Yes.
Did you consider yourself, against that background and your considerable ministerial experience, to be precisely the right First Minister for the job?
No, that's not how I would have thought of it at all. There's a large part of me wishes that I hadn't been.
All right, then. I'm joined now by Tory MP Lee Anderson. Lee, are those just crocodile tears?
Well, it looks like crocodile tears to me, Patrick. I mean, first we had the missing camper van. Nobody knows where that is. Now we've got this nonsense. We've got these burner phones, dodgy £5 phones from wherever they bought them from, WhatsApp messages going missing. It all looks a little bit dodgy to me. I mean, she's bleating on there, she's crying on screen. This is not cutting no ice. You know, it's crocodile tears. It makes you wonder what the SNPs are all about, Patrick. It looks... I mean, the people that have burner phones, let's be clear, people that have these dodgy phones where you can't trace them and disappearing WhatsApp messages, these are normally criminals, these are drug dealers, and you know what, these SNPs are no better than criminals.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you.
every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Last October, Professor Eric Kaufmann resigned his post at Birkbeck University after 2 decades of service, citing political differences. He is a specialist on nationalism and political and religious demography and has authored and edited multiple books on these subjects. But he didn't like the direction of the teaching, so he left. Now he's launched the first public online course on woke at a Western university, based at the University of Buckingham. And Professor Eric Kaufmann joins me now. Welcome to the show. Great to be here. So, you left Birkbeck University. What was your reasons for this?
Well, yeah, so basically what we have in terms of the crisis of the university now is two things. One, you've got pressure from the administration on you that might discipline you, punish you for speech or for things you write.
Yeah, for the wrong opinions.
For the wrong opinions. But I think more insidious than that is the kind of peer pressures that operate. So other people who may think you're radioactive and don't want to be around you, but they also may not want to hire you, promote you, publish you. So you are so dependent in a collegiate profession on your colleagues and not pissing them off and being on the right side of them, that if you have views that are heterodox, which is, you know, in a profession where it's 9 to 1 left to right.
Yes.
And you don't fit the 9, then, you know, there's an issue there. So you're going to have to watch your step.
But it didn't used to be the case, did it? I mean, if you go back a few decades in universities, it was just considered the norm that you would have people of various viewpoints. That was just accepted and standard, right?
Well, that's right. I mean, a couple of things have happened. One is, you know, in the mid-60s, it was maybe 2.5, 3 to 1 left to right, not 9 to 1.
Yes.
And in the elite universities now, I mean, Harvard, it's 82 to 1, right? So we're talking about the extreme monoculture that's formed. And also the left is more moralistic and absolutist, morally absolutist than it used to be. So that's quite a cocktail. And so I kind of thought, you know, in a way I have to get out and find a free space.
So part of this course that you've devised is to kind of explain or at least teach people about this particular phenomenon.
Well, exactly. I mean, woke is something that's surged in the press. It's covered very widely, and yet silence from universities in terms of studying this dispassionately.
Well, that's because they embody it,
right? Yeah, exactly. They think it's being a good person rather than an ideology just like fascism or communism or anything else.
Yes.
So it needs to be studied, and so that's what the course is doing, which is open. It's online, open to the public, so, you know, please do sign up. Also, of course, there is... this week, I'm going to be launching the new Centre for Heterodox Social Science at the University of Buckingham. And I should say the course is also based at the University of Buckingham, which is aspiring now to be the only free viewpoint diverse university out of 181 institutions in Britain. So within that, this new centre is going to be a place where non-progressive, not anti-progressive, but non-progressive views will have a critical mass. And so we can explore questions that are difficult or impossible to explore in a regular university.
I mean, it's so sad to see that often some of the most elite universities seem to have these problems. Oxford and Cambridge are particularly plagued with it. I mean, is it the case that we're just going to have to go to new institutions? I mean, Buckingham is a private university, dates back to the 70s, doesn't it? So it's relatively new. Is it just that we're going to have to, students who are intellectually curious are going to have to just find other places to study?
Unfortunately, I think that this is the only way the system can reform. I mean, we can have the Higher Education Freedom Bill, which is great in terms of clamping down on that institutional punishment. But when it comes to peer pressure and ostracism, there's nothing that a bill can do. So you have to create these centres that have a little bit more of a critical mass of sort of dissenters in order to actually get these ideas out there. So, yeah, a parallel system in a way of centres, journals, funding bodies. It's starting to emerge now, but we need this for universities. We have it for the media, we have GBNews, etc. We need to have something like that for universities. Otherwise, we're just going to lose all of the viewpoint diversity.
So students who are interested in exploring other ideas, not necessarily even endorsing them, but just discussing them and exploring them, they should be going and signing up for this centre, yes?
Well, that's what I would encourage them to do. I mean, the centre is a research centre, but it will have teaching, and it's got to grow. So we're looking to sort of fundraise and recruit students so that we can grow and hire more people.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, my course on woke, you know, on my Twitter, you can see on the pinned tweet how to sign up, various different options. But that's just the beginning, because we want to study subjects that have been ignored. And one of them I mentioned, obviously, the far left
the woke left, these are things that need to be objectively, dispassionately studied, but there are also a whole range of other topics. I don't know if you saw Roland Fryer, the Harvard economist who had a video up on Free Press where he talked about having police protection for 30 or 40 days just for publishing a finding that black Americans were not disproportionately targeted in police shootings. And for that, he essentially had to go into hiding. But that's
an incredible story, isn't it? You know, I mean, he's dealing with statistics. He's dealing with facts, analysis. How have we reached the point where someone like that would be demonised simply for reaching the unfashionable but true conclusion?
Well, exactly, and don't forget this happened in 2016, prior to the George Floyd stuff. So if actually you had an open climate of opinion, people might have been a little bit less credulous when some of the claims around thousands of young unarmed black men being killed by the police instead of 10 or 12.
Yes.
And they might not have overreacted to this. So it could have saved thousands of lives, millions, billions of dollars.
Can I ask you about why is there a propensity among academics for this kind of groupthink? Because I had Joe Phoenix on the show last week, who has been through a campaign of harassment over a number of years from academics, from her colleagues at the Open University, and a judge recently found against those people who had been harassing her. But nonetheless, that's a lot. She got diagnosed with PTSD. It was a terrible case. Why is it, and I've been in scraps online with academics, they tend to be the most truculent. They tend to behave like teenagers. But why is it that the smartest people behave like the stupidest?
Well, yeah, I think what it is a couple of things. I mean, one is you have this new moral absolutism on the left, and it doesn't matter if you're in the arts or in academia or elsewhere. You're going to get this attitude, inflexible attitude. But the other thing is, I think, is this monoculture. So once you're at 10 to 1 left to right, reality starts to drift away from you, and the center line becomes left biased.
Yes.
And so you start to, and people riff off each other and they push each other towards the extreme. So that can happen. The other thing that happens, of course, is when it's 10 to 1 left to right, and the left and the right, even if they're discriminating against each other equally, which they don't, by the way, but even if they did, the impact of that discrimination ideologically is 10 to 1 on whoever's the dissenter. So we've now got a situation where that discrimination hits so hard because it's multiplied by their advantage.
I mean, it's always been the case, hasn't it, that the right have tended to view the left as just a bit naive, but the left have tended to view the right as not just wrong, but evil. I mean, I think that's really the problem here. This gets exacerbated when there are the kinds of, when it's skewed so much against a particular viewpoint.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're right, but I think all of that's gotten worse. I mean, so studies, for example, of especially young university-educated people, 18-year-olds in 2000 versus an 18-year-old in 2016, same question. In 2016, that 18-year-old is a lot more intolerant. And so even if you're a leftist, in 2000 versus 2016, I mean, they've just become a lot more absolutist and less morally relativist. They used to be a bit more morally relativist, and it's now moral absolutism that's really dominant.
Do you think that maybe there's a lot of academics there who do maybe have heterodox views, but they just keep them to themselves because they want to get promoted and they want to get tenure or whatever it might be?
Yeah, I think there are more academics with heterodox views than you hear about, but I also wouldn't want to exaggerate, because some people think, oh, it's just people are scared, and if they spoke up, you know, sanity would prevail. But actually, it's not entirely the case. So, for example, most academics oppose cancel culture, but roughly by a 2-to-1 ratio, they would support, for example, mandatory diversity statements. More of them would support quotas, race and gender quotas on reading lists than would oppose it, by about 45 to 30. So, yes, there are people who are scared, but there's a lot of people who kind of believe what's on the top of the tin, and they don't really look under the surface of what DEI means to find out just how illiberal it is.
Which is why you need a centre to study it and expose it.
Exactly. It's the only way we can sort of create this alternative knowledge and these alternative networks, I think, is going to be to start something new and then hope to influence the mainstream. That's the goal.
So just finally, just remind us, how do they find out more information about this?
So go to my Twitter, which is @EPKAUFM. Go to the pinned tweet, and you can find all the information there.
Fantastic. Eric Kaufman, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you. And coming up on the show, Dr. Alka Sehgal-Cuthbert will join me to tell us why she thinks Labour's new Race Equality Act is just an attempt to play woke identity politics. This is Free Speech Nation on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
Lots of people have different ideas, but principally a conservative approach to getting growth is to reduce taxes so that people, ordinary people and businesses can spend more of their own money to invest and grow the economy.
So the theory is that you cut taxes and that then pumps more money into the economy.
Exactly right. And then people, you know, it's not government that are creating wealth. It's individuals, businessmen, companies that create wealth. It's the private sector that creates wealth, that the public sector then taxes and spends.
I get the theory, but one of the criticisms of you, and I think one of the criticisms actually of all political parties, is they appear to be incapable of cutting government spending.
That's the key. I mean, and I think when I look back, is that we should have had a credible plan to reduce the increase in spending. Now, that's often a difficult concept to explain.
But it's in line with inflation, etc.
That's all right. So when you're slowing the increase, it means, you know, one year you spend £100 and the next year you spend maybe £101 as opposed to going up to £110. So the actual level isn't going down, but you're slowing the increase. And that's very much what I tried to do. And actually, looking back, the one thing I wish I'd done, was to present a credible spending plan at the same time as the tax cuts that we announced.
You had a go, it didn't work out for whatever reason, and that analysis will go on for some years to come. We have Jeremy Hunt there as Chancellor now, hinting quite strongly now there won't be any tax cuts, but the truth of it is, under 14 years of Conservatives, for a variety of reasons, the tax burden has risen.
That's right.
To the highest since the Attlee government way back in
80 years,
1951, whatever it is.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together. For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
On Mark Dolan tonight, in My Big Opinion, why are the Conservatives losing? Because they're not Conservative anymore. My Mark Meets guest is legendary former Labour MP and celebrated diarist Chris Mullin. And in My Take at 10, John Lewis are in hot water for launching a magazine which recommends breast binders for young girls. When did they give up selling electronic goods and the latest fashions? We're live at 9.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Shadow Equality Secretary Annalise Dodds said this week Labour's new Race Equality Act will represent significant change. The party argues it will enshrine in law the right to equal pay for black, Asian and ethnic minority people. So here to join me to discuss this is Alka Sehgal-Cuthbert from the campaign group Don't Divide Us. Alka, welcome to the show. I was under the impression that it's been illegal to pay people differently on the basis of skin colour for 5 decades or so. Am I wrong about this?
No, you're not wrong. I think what the Act is attempting to do, part of it, is to do things like make mandatory reporting necessary for all employers on racial disparities, and to also sort of introduce the same thing that was introduced through Athena Swan, which is to make work, rather than like two people doing the same job, it's like comparing work, which sounds sensible, like for like jobs, but actually it's much more complicated than that. You know, you could be in a classroom and have a teaching assistant and a teacher, and you'd look at it, and on the surface of it, from observation, it might seem that they're doing the same work, and the teaching assistant might think that he or she's doing the same work. But actually, the jobs are very different. The prior experience, prior qualifications are very different.
But is there a racial pay gap? Because that's what Labour seem to be claiming. And if that is the case, is that because of systemic racism in various companies, or is it because of something else?
Well, look, I think that's it's a really important question to ask of this Act. Is it addressing a real and well understood problem? And I think the answer is it's really hard to tell, because the way it's being presented by Annalise Dodds and Keir Starmer is in a very politicised way. You know, it's making grand generalisation, sweeping statements that are encouraging us to believe that a disparity must be discrimination. And of course, we know that it isn't. If you actually look at the statistics, official statistics, you'll see a much more complicated picture. You know, so for example, if we're looking at household incomes, when you're looking at the person in the household with the highest income, you'll see that it's Indian, Chinese and white ethnic groups that come out best, you know, that have the highest household incomes. If you're looking at a different set of criteria, then it is true that Black African or Black British employees earn less median gross salary than the white employees. But, and this is a really frustrating thing, because the Race Equality Act as it's presented and conceived of at the moment will not address this. If you look at the country of birth, then you see that it's actually UK-born Black African, Caribbean and Black British people earn more than white people. Now, to me, that would suggest it's something worth looking at. It's worth investigating. It probably has something to do with migration. And if you're looking at migration, then you're also be looking at other people from East Europe that are coming in. And you'll be looking at language, you'll be looking at family support, networks, etc. But none of this is being looked at. Instead, we're having this very blunt instrument that is really an example of the way Starmer and Annalise Dodds and a section of the Labour Party are really going quite down. They're unable to withstand and ask questions of race, of, you know, so-called anti-racist activists. I would say they're new racist activists. They're re-racialising everything, and it's to the depth of actually tackling real problems.
And we do have this phenomenon cropping up again and again, don't we? When we had the Commission for Racial and Ethnic Disparities report, and they were looking into schools in particular, and they made the point that there's no evidence of systemic racism in the education system. And in fact, if you look very closely at the statistics, you'll find that although black children from a Caribbean background aren't performing as well as white children, black children from an African background are performing better than white children. In other words, if it is systemic racism, it's of an oddly targeted kind. But they were criticised by the Runnymede Trust and others because they failed to find the answer that it is, yes, it is, must be systemic racism. Is that just a problem now, a sort of determination from campaigners and activists to put everything down to systemic racism?
It is a real problem. I mean, the promotion of the ideas that these activists and these charity groups are promoting very vigorously is a real problem for anyone that believes in truth, anyone that actually wants to understand society as complex. People are complex, that you need a good, robust social science methodology, not just quick qualitative reports where you go out and interview people, or you just look at one set of statistics. And you need the really chilling thing is that the way they're promoting this revealed belief almost, you look at a disparity and racism is revealed. That's all you need. It's chilling space you need for free speech to actually investigate this properly. So they're actually, doing a disservice to the very people they claim they want to help. But they are, of course, being very well funded, get a lot of, cultural and moral kudos for promoting this very divisive narrative.
Yes, and of course that's why Don't Divide Us exists, to address this narrative that we all must be divided. Where can people find out more about the group?
Please do come to our website, don'tdivideus.com. If you like what we're doing, please support us, subscribe to us, and watch out for us, because we are serious about this. This is a serious problem. It needs tackling.
Alcasego Cuthbert, thanks very much for joining me. And of course, what Don't Divide Us do is that they attempt to counter this narrative that we are an inherently backward, evil, racist society. They say that we have more in common. And, you know, that seems to me a very positive thing, but of course they're attacked for doing so.
Well, I love what she's saying about looking at the detail of a problem. If you fail to ask the right questions and you just lazily say, oh, the country's racist, you're not helping people at all. You're not achieving anything.
So why is the Labour Party so determined to paint us as a racist country?
Oh, because it gives them control and power over people. I mean, diversity, equity and inclusion, it's a way of organising society.
Yes.
And interestingly, a lot of far-right people, a lot of old-school racists, like genuine racists, think that diversity, equity and inclusion is fantastic because it divides people by racial groups.
Exactly. Well, I think that's the point of Don't Divide Us. Anyway, next on Free Speech Nation, a 60-year-old cyclist takes on a 60-foot lorry. And that means it's time for Social Sensations. Please don't go anywhere. You're watching Free Speech Nation.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Elon Musk has announced that the first patients to receive a groundbreaking brain implant from Neuralink is recovering well.
This is all a bit odd. The product, called telepathy, uses a robot to surgically place a computer chip in a region of the brain that controls movement.
Yes, Elon Musk says that the first goal is to enable people to control a phone or a computer just by thinking. He says that initial tests show promising signs of brain activity, meaning that patients with paralysis could one day overcome their conditions.
Not sure about this one. Joining us to discuss this breakthrough is applied futurist Tom Cheesewright. Tom, this sounds, well, slightly terrifying.
I certainly think a lot of people will be thinking this is something out of a sci-fi horror rather than reality. But this is a technology that's been a long time coming. We've been developing direct brain-computer interfaces for a long time, mostly for the sort of therapeutic reasons that are the initial goal, at least, of Elon Musk's Neuralink, to allow people who are perhaps quadriplegic to have direct control via their brains of initially a smartphone and maybe ultimately artificial limbs or a wheelchair.
It does seem fascinating how quickly this technology is moving on. I saw demonstrations perhaps a year or two ago of people playing a very simple Pong game just by thinking, moving sort of one line on a screen up and down. This seems like potentially there has been a breakthrough that means far more complex things can be controlled just by thinking.
Well, there's lots of different aspects to this technology. The initial attempts to interface with the brain used actually quite thick prongs almost that went into the brain, and they were quite solid, and so if the brain moved, they could potentially cause damage.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
To Free Speech Nation. Now it's time for Social Sensations. That's the part of the show where we look at what's been going viral this week on social media. So first up, we got this video from the German Football League where a game was interrupted by a couple of remote-controlled cars going rogue. Let's have a look.
That's half the number of goals that Robert Glatzel has scored on his own in Bundesliga 2.
So 2 cars entered the pitch after 10 minutes, emitting blue and white smoke. After a brief delay, stewards kicked the cars into touch so the game could restart. There are conflicting claims the cars were driven onto the pitch in protest against a proposed deal to sell a stake in football rights to overseas investors. The issue of funding... oh, no, sorry. I was going to ask you first about this. What do you think?
Yeah, I was thinking it might be a protest about funding for Ukraine.
I mean, it could be
it's blue, and if it was yellow...
If it was yellow... But shouldn't protesters be clear about what it is they're protesting?
And shouldn't protesters protest about something that matters instead of like a football stadium getting sold to like an investor? I mean,
doesn't that matter?
No, it doesn't even matter to the world of
Yeah, but you're not a football fan, are you?
No, I'm not.
No.
I mean, this is the first interesting thing that's ever happened on a football pitch.
I mean, is that the point? Because it's actually made it a bit more interesting watching the cars.
Well, we're talking about it, aren't we?
We are talking about it.
Great form of protest. A lot of fun. I want to hear the Benny Hill music played over the top of it, watching the guys chase.
Well, I think it's better than the Just Stop Oil people throwing stuff on Van Gogh and stuff like that. I can't
It's
deal
a
with
lot
that.
better than that, yeah. Although this gives them a new idea, doesn't it? Let's see what they're going to do with flares on remote control.
Oh, maybe. But like you say, it's only football. That's probably the most controversial thing I've said tonight. Anyway, so the issue of funding for Ukraine is a thorny one in the US. So when Lord David Cameron tried to get involved this week, he met with a frosty response from a staunch Republican opponent. Let's have a listen.
Well, he likened you to an appeaser to Hitler in not voting through funding for Ukraine. Are you an appeaser for Putin?
I think that I really don't care what David Cameron has to say. I think that's rude name-calling, and I don't appreciate that type of language. And David Cameron needs to worry about his own country, and frankly, he can kiss my ass.
Ouch. OK, that was US Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene telling David Cameron to keep his nose out of American politics in a particularly colourful way. And Lord Cameron has called on the US Congress to greenlight a new funding package for Ukraine, likening those who oppose it to appeasers of Hitler. Thoughts, Leo?
Yeah, they're worse than appeasers of Hitler. They're appeasers of Putin. And, yeah, I think these Americans need to remember whose country they're really in. We still own that country. Yeah, we let you win that first war of independence, but there's no saying we're not going to have another one, so you better watch out.
So you're angry on David Cameron's behalf?
Yeah, no, honestly, this is probably a rare moment where I agree with David Cameron and think he's doing a good thing. I think the way the West has just abandoned Ukraine, and the EU as well, like the amount of funding is absolutely paltry, and it's not as if we give the money to Ukraine. What happens is we spend the money in our own countries to build weapons to give to Ukraine so it can defend itself.
Yeah.
And for some reason, the right wing, who used to be staunchly nationalist and staunchly defending Western liberty and freedom and democracy, have completely flipped. And now they're like Owen Jones. They're like, oh no, Ukraine's got Nazis and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, it blows my mind.
Yeah, but well, if Donald Trump gets in, though, he says he'll end this overnight. He's not going to help Ukraine.
Well, interestingly, like in his first term, Donald Trump funded Ukraine, armed Ukraine, did everything you'd expect a right-wing leader to do. But now that it's become this sort of this tribal thing where the Democrats are seen as supporting Ukraine, so we can't, so we've got to be contrarian. It's weird. Can there just be one thing that everybody agrees on, and that thing be that like driving Putin out of Europe and showing all the strong men around the world, all these autocratic leaders, that if you invade Taiwan, if you invade Moldova, the Baltics, or wherever it is, then you will get this solid, staunch response from the West, and we will unite. Isn't that something we should say?
OK, Leo Kearse alienating his right-wing fan base there, quite interestingly. What do you make of this one, Cressida?
I think she would love to have dinner with Leo and discuss it further. I think we're always calling for politicians to say what they really mean, and she did a great job, didn't she? Just straight off the cuff, I've had enough of this week.
Yeah, but, I mean, should politicians be using that kind of language?
I don't mind. I'm not offended by that at all.
No.
It gives me some pointers for how to deal with some of my colleagues. I'm not talking about Lewis Schaefer. I am talking about Lewis Schaefer.
Of course you're talking about Lewis Schaefer. OK, finally, who should give way when a 60-foot-long lorry comes face-to-face with a 60-year-old cyclist on a narrow country lane? It's the old problem. Let's have a look.
You could just... Sorry?
So where am I meant to go then?
To a wide bit. I can see a wide bit. Just 3 lorries.
Is there a wide bit there?
You think it's easier for me to reverse? I'm 60 foot long and the same width of this road, as you can see by the fact I'm in the hedge both sides.
Turn round and go back.
Well, because surely it's easier for you to go back as a push bike than it is for me as a 60-foot lorry.
So who are we siding with in that little dispute? Cressida, do you have a particular view?
I do. I'm glad I don't live in the countryside anymore. I really love London. Do I have a view? God, I mean, it would be easier for the cyclists to go back, that's true, but who's the person filming this? It's almost as if they had a plan. Why are they filming?
Oh, well, it's the person in the lorry. This is, by the way, is in Hampshire. But basically, the cyclist wants them to go back to the wide bit.
Yeah,
doesn't it look like there is a wide bit?
Well, no, that's true. You don't get passing places very often.
And also reversing a 60-foot lorry in the country is dangerous, isn't it?
Yes.
There could be hedgehogs about, all sorts of things.
Yeah, get on your bike.
Yeah.
I just love how you got 2 female road users and they're calling it the wide bit instead of a lay-by or a passing place.
To be fair, I would have called it the wide bit.
It's like, what's that lorry you got? A blue one. You know what I mean?
but what would you? I mean, who do you side with there, Leo? Out of those two?
I think the lorry, I don't know why the lorry stopped, just barrel over that, you know, like, I mean, for God's sake, what sort of pedant? What sort of pedant? Obviously, it's a cyclist. That's what sort of pedant is saying, like, oh, no, you reverse, you jackknife your lorry,
yeah.
You know, so I can, you know...
Yeah, I mean, look, I wasn't there. I don't know the full situation, but I would say that just looking at that from the evidence, I would say surely the cyclists should just move out of the way. But they could duck between the hedges, couldn't they?
Cyclists are a bit smug, aren't they?
Yeah. Asking a woman to reverse in a car is a big ask. Asking her to do it in an articulated...
And now Leo is alienating all the female viewers. Doing a great job, Leo. Goodness me, we're going to get so many complaints after this show. Anyway, now is the part of the show where we're going to talk through your unfiltered dilemmas. I'm really very grateful that you email in with all of your problems and you think that we're going to make a difference. But you do it week on. Every single week we get them. This one has come in from Noah. Noah says, my girlfriend wished me a happy birthday on Instagram, but I don't want the whole world seeing my private life. If I repost, then privacy goes out the window. If I don't, she thinks I'm hiding something. What should I do? I mean, it depends. I mean, does that reveal your birth date? I mean, is the issue, Noah, there that you're worried about having your identity stolen by fraudsters? What's the issue there?
Well, everyone's obsessed with birthdays. Why can't we be just left to grieve alone? You know, I like to just have a private... I took my birthday off Facebook a few years ago, and...
Well, you're not meant to put it up there because people can get the date, and then that's bad for security reasons.
OK, well, there's that too. But also, you don't have to... Like, you don't have to acknowledge it. You just have a nice, normal day.
I mean, are you against birthdays just because you're a year closer to death? It's a kind of... It's a morbid thing. You should be mourning it.
The sweet relief. No, no, I don't know. I just don't like a fuss.
You don't like a fuss?
I think he should be allowed to... And what's she worried that he's hiding? His own birthday? I don't.
I think he probably has an obligation, doesn't he, to repost Instagram posts from his girlfriend, doesn't he?
Yeah, but then if he reposts this post from his girlfriend, then his wife is going to find out.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Girlfriend.
That's the problem with the digital world, isn't it? It's very difficult to be a polygamist these days. Anyway, I say that with all my wives out there watching tonight. Nice to... Anyway, hope you're all well. Now, our second dilemma comes in from Greg, and Greg says, on a recent trip to Kitzbühel, is that how you pronounce it? Kitzbühel? Kitzbühel. There we go. I took a friend's really nice ski jacket that he'd left behind at the hotel bar. He spent the last 2 days of the trip freezing cold. I brought the jacket home and can now only wear it around the house in case he sees me in it. Should I just flog it on eBay? Oof. Wow. Well, firstly, you're a thief. And that's not justifiable, is it, Leo?
No, and why did he steal his mate's jacket? That's weird. This is why I dress like this. Nobody steals my clothes.
Where is Kitzbühel?
I don't know.
Austria, is it?
Right.
OK. Is it one of those posh sort of ski resorts like Gstaad? Yeah. What do you make of this one, Cressida?
I'm with Leo. What are you doing nicking your mate's clothes? That's not on, is it? Maybe give it to a charity shop. That's a happy medium.
Or give it back to the friend. Why is no one suggesting this? If you've taken someone's jacket, give it back to the person who owns the jacket. Am I the only one on this panel with a moral compass? Unbelievable. Come on, people, step up. Right. We've got a final dilemma this week. This is coming from Leanne. Leanne says, is it just me, or are prawn cocktail-flavoured quavers just plain wrong? I mean, that's not so much a dilemma, is it? That's more just a complaint. I mean, I don't have an issue. Look, I'm a vegetarian, and actually, apparently, you can eat prawn cocktail-flavoured quavers even if you're a vegetarian, because it doesn't have real prawn in it. No prawns are harmed in the making of those crisps. Do you think they are particularly objectionable, Leo?
And prawns aren't really animals either. They're like insects that live in the sea. So just it's easy bugs, but we're already doing it. Yeah, but prawn cocktail flavour, it just tastes wrong. It's like weird. It's like sweet.
Yeah, it's odd, isn't it?
And sort of a bit fishy.
Yeah, you should stick to cheese and onion.
Yeah, or ready salted. Why mess with
Or
the
salt
natural
and vinegar,
flavour?
be a man. Come on.
No, too much flavour in salt and vinegar.
Cressida, did you have a particular issue with prawn cocktail flavoured quavers?
I don't, Andrew. To your earlier point, did you know Frazzles are vegan as well?
Yeah, they are. All these meat-flavoured things are not actually... They've got no meat in them.
Stuff.
You have to go to the posh crisps, you know, like the kettle crisps, stuff like that.
They've got real kettle.
They have bits of actual animal
Right.
in there. But otherwise, they don't. Like, Frazzles are great for vegetarians. I love Frazzles.
Did you know that more animals are killed to provide vegetarian food than beef or lamb?
Are you just making that up?
No,
That's absolutely
so
not true.
lamb just grazes on the ground. It doesn't. Nothing gets killed apart from the lamb.
Yeah.
Eventually gets killed. But if you eat something that's made out of wheat, then they're killing they're putting poison down. They're using probably Jack Russells to catch rabbits. There's all that going on.
I refuse to believe this. I'm a vegetarian and I'm not responsible for the deaths of these cows.
All the dormouse nests get caught in the combine.
Oh, I don't care about dormice. Anyway, thank you for joining us for Free Speech Nation. This was the week when a man was arrested for criticising Hamas, a 90-year-old woman was sacked for being confused about pronouns, and the Irish hate crime bill edged ever closer to reality. Thank you ever so much to my panel, Cressida Wetton and Leo Kearse, and also to my guests, Lois McClatchy, Miranda Seymour, Professor Eric Kaufman and Dr. Alka Segal-Cuthbert. And by the way, if you want to join us live and be in this studio and part of our wonderful audience, you can easily do that. Just go to www.sroaudiences.com. The address is there on the screen. Stay tuned, by the way, because Mark Dolan tonight is coming up right in a moment. And don't forget, Headliners is on every night at 11 o'clock. That's the late-night paper preview show where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. Thanks ever so much for watching Free Speech Nation. I'll see you next week.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, I'm Marco Patagna. Here's your latest weather update from the Met Office. We'll hold on to rather mixed conditions weather-wise across the UK during the week ahead, all of us seeing some rain at times and turning colder from the north later on. We've got a small ridge of high pressure moving in from the west tonight, quietening the weather down, but notice weather fronts gathering out towards the northwest and they'll bring further unsettled weather during the next few days. So as we go into the evening and during the overnight period, much of the UK is set fine. We'll see some clear spells, allowing a few mist and fog patches to form, particularly across Wales and the southwest of England. But outbreaks of rain work their way in from the northwest across Scotland and Northern Ireland, reaching Wales, the north of England by the morning, with blustery showers towards the northwest later. A mild night, so no frost problems tonight. And as we go into Monday, that band of rain continues its journey southeastwards, becoming light and patchy as it reaches the southeast during the course of the morning, and then fizzling out to give much brighter weather across the UK heading into the afternoon. Some showers, though, towards the northwest, quite blustery here, with further rain moving in across the west of Scotland later in the day. It's a pretty mild day once again, temperatures generally in double figures, peaking at 10 in the north and near 13 or 14 degrees down towards the southeast. As for Tuesday, well, a band of wet and windy weather will move its way southeastwards across many northern parts of the UK. Towards the south and east, it stays mostly fine with a few bright spells at times and staying quite mild once again for the time of year, with temperatures into the low teens Celsius in a few spots. But it stays pretty unsettled as we go into Wednesday and Thursday, further wet weather around and turning colder from the north later on too.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
On Mark Dolan tonight, in My Big Opinion, why are the Conservatives losing? Because they're not Conservative anymore. My Mark Meets guest is legendary former Labour MP and celebrated diarist Chris Mullin. And in My Take at 10, John Lewis are in hot water for launching a magazine which recommends breast binders for young girls. When did they give up selling electronic goods and the latest fashions? We're live at 9.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Lee Anderson's Real World, Fridays from 7 p.m.
Dr. Jane Jones, who's the clinical lead for Care After Combat.
Yeah.
Jane, thanks for coming. And just tell me a little bit about your organisation. What do you do?
OK, well, thank you for having me here so we can talk about Care After Combat. So we are an organisation, a charity, who work into the prison system, working with military veterans who've somehow got involved with the justice system and...
So there's quite a high population of ex-servicemen and women in our prisons. Why is that, do you think?
So 2014, the government did a review of who was resident in UK prisons, and what they found were that military veterans are the highest occupational group, and this obviously raises some concerns. Yeah. So the government wanted to do something about that, and so they supported Care After Combat initially, just as a scoping exercise, really, to see if there was any way we could help these men and women actually, you know, understand the problems that led to offending behaviour and go on to lead successful lives.
So what sort of offending behaviour are we talking typically for people that's in prison that's actually served in our armed forces?
Primarily, it's violence.
Yeah.
So that is the highest offence that we work with.
Okay.
But of course, the military, as with everybody else, it's the full range of offending behaviour.
OK, so we're in a pub, Jane, Dr. Jane, and I guess for some people, you know, the odd tip of alcohol is good, a bit of fun of a weekend, relax, let your hair down. But for some people, alcohol is not always their best friend, and I guess that plays a part in some of your veterans that end up inside.
Absolutely. So, speaking from my own experience, a good 2/3 of the people I work with have some kind of mental health problem or mental health difficulty, struggling to either adapt into civilian life or with some of the traumas they've experienced during service. People might self-medicate with alcohol to manage some of those thoughts and feelings.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. It's 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. Coming up, in my big opinion, why are the Conservatives losing? Well, because they're not Conservative anymore. I'll be dealing with the Tories' identity crisis in just a moment. Also, Sir Flip-Flop strikes again.
A ceasefire that lasts, conference, that is what must happen now. The fighting must stop now.
We'll get reaction from Anne Widdecombe on Keir Starmer's Gaza U-turn. Also in the big story, is immigration good for Britain? We'll be joined by a fearless academic who says no. In my Take at 10, John Lewis are in hot water for promoting a magazine which recommends breast binders for young girls. Has Britain's favourite department store finally lost the plot? I'll be dealing with this woke madness at 10.